Good evening, and we are here at the National Emergency Management Agency on this Friday night, September the 16th, National Heroes Day. I take this opportunity, of course, to wish all citizens and residents a National Heroes Day. But we are here because we know that there is an impending storm, Tropical Fiona. Tropical Storm Fiona. My name is Les Roy Williams, and I'm the Public Education, Communication, Notification, Awareness. I represent the subcommittee on the National Emergency Operations Center. And today we will be discussing Tropical Storm Fiona. Of course, it is on everyone's mind, and of course the best that we can do is prepare for the impact that we will have from Tropical Storm Fiona. I have with me Mr. Elmo Burke, and Mr. Elmo Burke is the Senior Met Officer at SCASPA, and Mr. Burke will be giving us an update on Tropical Storm Fiona. So Elmo, tell us, at this present time, where is Tropical Storm Fiona? And when is it expected to impact us here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Good night, Leslie. Good night, viewing audience. As of 5 p.m. this evening, Tropical Storm Fiona was located at 16.4 degrees north, 61.1 degrees west, or approximately 123 miles to the east-southeast of St. Kitts and Nevis. Tropical Storm Fiona was moving in a westerly direction at about 15 miles per hour and has minimum central pressure of 1,004 millibars and has sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. On its current path, Tropical Storm Fiona will pass less than 50 miles to the south of us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. As a result, skies across St. Kitts and Nevis this evening into tonight will be increasingly cloudy to overcast with heavy showers and thunderstorms. While tomorrow, skies should be cloudy to overcast with showers initially, as well as thunderstorms. A gradual improvement in conditions is expected as we move throughout the afternoon. Winds tonight are expected to be from the northeast at 25 to 40 miles per hour with higher gusts, while tomorrow winds are expected to be from the south at 25 to 35 miles per hour with higher gusts. Winds are expected to subside as we move through the afternoon tomorrow. Seas are expected to deteriorate, reaching ranges from 9 to 15 feet during the passage of Tropical Storm Fiona. Possible rainfall totals while Tropical Storm Fiona is impacting us is 3 to 6 inches, and due to that, a flash flood watch or warning may be initiated later this evening or throughout the night. There is a high potential for flash flooding as well as landslides, so residents are urged to exercise extreme caution in areas that are prone to flash flooding as well as landslides during the passage of Tropical Storm Fiona. Thanks.
Now, Elmo, is Tropical Storm Fiona expected to develop into a hurricane? Are there any chances of it developing into a hurricane before it reaches us here?
Thanks for the question, Leslie. As it stands right now, Tropical Storm Fiona is not expected to develop into a hurricane prior to the bulk of the weather impacting us. As it stands, we are already feeling some of the feeder bands from Tropical Storm Fiona. At 5 p.m., the center was located just to the east of Guadeloupe and moving in a westerly directions. If persons look at the graphics that we have displayed, persons would recognize there's a large cloud mass that is expected to move over us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and that is what is going to create the inclement weather throughout the night and into tomorrow morning.
Has Tropical Storm Fiona taken any different course since it has started moving towards the islands?
Yes, it had. Yesterday, Fiona was coming directly straight to us in terms of the center. The center was coming straight to us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. However, overnight, it would have taken a dip slightly, and as such, it's now closer. The center is now located closer to the Guadeloupe area. Nonetheless, the bulk of the weather is located in the northern and the eastern flank of the storm. And as such, we here in St. Kitts and Nevis, although the center will not pass over us, we are expecting direct impact in terms of tropical storm conditions here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Right. So what are some of the precautions that you would advise citizens and residents to take?
One of the main advice that we would give is persons need to avoid exposure, especially to the guts. If you are parked in the guts, we are asking you at this moment, please move it now. Because in the event, if we do get that 3 to 6 inches of rainfall, the chances of flash flooding is very high. And we would have recognized that the soils are already saturated from the shower activity that we would have been receiving over the past 36 hours. And as such, if we do get that 3 to 6 inches, it's highly likely that we will see flash flooding. Also, residents are urged to exercise caution. If you don't have to be outside, don't be outside. This is not the time to explore, because we do recognize that we are talking about potentially storm force winds affecting us overnight into early morning, and as such, that can create some missiles and so forth with loose objects.
When is the storm expected to move away from us? In other words, when will it subside over St. Kitts and Nevis?
Remember, I would have indicated that the bulk of the weather is to the north and to the back end of Tropical Storm Fiona. So although the center might be moving away from us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are not anticipating conditions to start to gradually improve until we reach later in the morning at earliest or in the afternoon.
The reason I'm asking that is, of course, you know, we have our independence celebrations, and depends a lot on having very fair weather. So by next week, by Sunday, by Monday, are we expected to be back to normal in terms of the weather?
Yes, we should be. One of the concern, however, at the same time, we do recognize, because the system is passing to our south, it will churn the water. So even though the storm might be closer to Puerto Rico and so forth, for a while it will be churning our waters, so it would be a delay effect in terms of how long the seas would be choppy. So that is something that persons need to be mindful of. But in terms of the inclement weather, in terms of rainfall and winds, we are expecting those to subside by tomorrow.
Okay. And even though the storm moves away from us, it still leaves some sort of remnants. You mentioned the seas. The seas can still be rough.
Yes.
And we can still have rain.
Yes.
Going into.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We are not discounting the potential for some trailing moisture to the back of the system. However, in terms of the storm-like conditions, we anticipate it to finish sometime late tomorrow morning, or at worst, early in the afternoon. But we'll be monitoring closely, recognizing that the weather is dynamic. It can change for the better, or it can change for the worse. And as such, we here at NEMA will be providing you with the update in a timely manner.
Right, and that is extremely important, because people have to prepare and to pay attention to every update in the weather, because that informs the decisions that they make in terms of, you know, maneuvering through this storm.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Elmo.
Thanks for having me again. That's right.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Mr. John Bergman, and Mr. John Bergman is the commander in the National Emergency Operations Center. Welcome, Inspector Bergen.
Good evening, Mr. Williams, and good evening to the viewing audience.
Right, and I want you to give some description or some information with respect to your role as commander in the NEOC.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for the question. At about 4 p.m. today, the National Emergency Operations Center was activated here at NEMA. We have a number of government agencies represented here. We have the police force, we have the St. Kitts Nevis Defense Force, SCELEC, Public Works, Social Services, Health, most of the essential government institutions where we coordinate in one area to ensure that there's a response to any need that the Federation may have as we anticipate the coming of Tropical Storm Fiona. So we are here, and we're going to be here throughout the night coordinating. We have already spoken with the police authorities that we are activated, and so if there's any call coming to 911, they would then transfer that call to the NEOC so that we can respond appropriately.
So the NEOC becomes the sort of a center where everything is reported with respect to the storm. What is happening, people can call the NEOC and report, and the NEOC will then get the relevant information to where it needs to go, so that if services are needed in a particular area, those services are dispatched to those areas affected.
Quite correctly, Mr. Williams.
Mm-hmm. Right. And anything else you want to say in terms of the...
Yes, I would like to speak to the traveling public, in particular, the motorists who are normally on the roads. This storm, as Mr. Burke would have indicated, is packing some winds of 50 miles per hour thereabout, and so we are encouraging motorists to stay off the road, not to park near guts or in the guts, and try to stay off the road this evening and until the all clear is given. Also, the persons who may have vessels, fishing vessels or boats, we hope that those are secured already, and we want to ensure that everybody is safe, and so that nobody is injured while the storm is passing.
Okay, thank you very much, Inspector Bergen.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Good evening.
Good evening. I would now like to invite Mr. Colin Brown, and Mr. Brown is the Control Operations and Protection Manager at SCELEC. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Williams.
Right, of course, SCELEC plays a very important part in all of these disasters and so on, because power, energy is important. Sometimes, with a storm, you have to have things in place to ensure that the power stays on, but sometimes it does not stay on. So tell us what SCELEC has in place in terms of the resilience of your
our systems and our plans. Thank you again for having me, and an opportunity on behalf of the team at SCELEC to inform the general public of SCELEC's preparations and response to Tropical Storm Fiona. SCELEC has a comprehensive disaster response plan that went into effect when the first alert was given for the approach and possible strike of Fiona. This plan outlines the positioning of our resources and our teams to be as best as possible poised to respond after. Our teams are in place, distributed around the island, and after the strike, and of course on the directive of NEMA, our teams respond by scouting their designated areas and doing the critical damage assessment so that then we can plan for how we recover after the storm.
I know that you had some reduced capacity recently that led to some load shedding. Do you think that with the passage of this storm that capacity will again be affected and we might have to go back to load shedding?
With the passage of a storm and all the uncertainties, there is a risk that our generation capacity can be affected. However, there are two factors that are working in our favor. typically, during the passage of a storm or any similar national possible crisis or impending disaster, conspicuously the consumption falls. So as reported yesterday in the pre-strike briefing, our demand was about 1.5 megs off of the previous day peak, and it was again reduced today. Business activities down, all the bank aircons, all that heavy industrial and commercial activity is reduced. So we see a ease in demand, and that gives us more space. So forced load shedding because of reduced capacity is unlikely. As well, the second factor that is positively affecting and gives us a limited chance of experiencing forced outages due to reduced capacity. As you are aware, and many of the public are aware, Skelec recently acquired 2 additional gensets, each rated at 1.5 megawatt. The decision was made to acquire those gensets after we had the failure, and commendably, both to the administration of the federal government and the team at Skelec, those gensets arrived this week. And I'm pleased to say today, commendations to the hardworking team at Skelec, both of those units were installed and placed online.
Right, so you have additional capacity.
So
now.
I have been authorized to share that we have 3 megawatts additional capacity. Our available capacity has increased by 3 megawatts.
Wonderful. So your staff at Skelec, your staff, they are prepared and they are ready to go in the eventuality of anything. The crews are all oiled and,
and warmed up.
And ready to move.
Exactly. Our EOC at Skelec, our Emergency Operations Center, was activated shortly after the NEOC, the National Emergency Operations Center, was activated. The resources are in place, the supplies for those who have to shelter in place, and keep the electricity service going throughout the storm, which is Skelec's intention, notwithstanding a few outages today. And we strongly believe we have made the necessary preparations, are in a good posture to respond and provide reliable service, electricity service to the island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for being prepared.
Thank you very much for NEMA and helping us be prepared.
Right. I now invite Mr. Brian Dyer, who is the coordinator or the director of the National Disaster Management Department in Nevis, or the Nevis Disaster Management Department. Mr. Dyer. Mr. Dyer is going to join us virtually.
Hi, good evening. That's right, and good evening to your listening audience. Pleasure to be here.
Mr. Abdias Samuel, our National Disaster Coordinator, while we get this thing sorted out with Mr. Dyer. Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Samuel, well, you're the head here at the NEMA, our National Emergency Management Agency, and you are our National Disaster Coordinator, which means that you oversee all the operations here at NEOC. You are the director of NEOC and so on. What update do you have for us?
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and thank you to the general public, those who are listening via all means. We are happy to have this briefing to enlighten the general public about what is happening. So yesterday we would have had a pre-strike meeting which was chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister as the Executive Director of the National Emergency Operations Center. We would have had a briefing by all national stakeholders, whether private, public, and also civil society, from civil society, to inform the Prime Minister of their state of readiness so that we can know what we need to do in order to prepare.
based on consultation we would have had with the Met Office, as well as the Antigua and Barbuda Office of Disaster Management, and also CDMO and CIMH, multi-stakeholder consultation, national and regionally. We decided to recommend to the Honorable Prime Minister and the Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Marcus Nato, the need to partially activate the National Emergency Operations Center. In that regard, we did so today at approximately 4 p.m. And then we would have had Nevis, who would have activated as of 6 p.m. And Mr. Dyer will speak to that when he gets the opportunity to brief. Presently, we are evaluating and doing some pre-impact assessment of St. Kitts and Nevis, looking at the coastlines, looking at the critical infrastructure such as our road networks, such as the telecommunications sector, and we're looking also at the business sector and also as the housing sector. We're also looking at the vulnerability assessment of geographical areas that are prone to flooding, landslide, and also rockfall and flooding. We are also looking at the vulnerability of the people themselves. We know that we have some persons that are living in some conditions that are not quite suitable for the impact of even a storm or even heavy rains. So we are taking that into consideration. We are also assessing at the present moment, as we continue an ongoing assessment, Mr. Williams, of vulnerable groups who are, for example, the differently abled, those who have mental challenge in particular. Those persons we also are presently evaluating. We had some teams deployed to the east of the island and the west of the island. And based on the fact that we are expecting the storm to impact more of the southern part of the island as it travels through the Caribbean Sea, we have estimated that from the area of South Friars, from the peninsula to the St. Paul's Day Bay area, we have estimated impact to approximately 25,000 persons, and also looking at the impact of critical infrastructure such as our ports of entry, such as our business hubs, our roadways, looking at waterways, as well as looking at critical infrastructure such as the electricity, cable, internet, and everything else there is to take a look at. What we want to do is to make sure that we are on top of our game to ensure that our BCP, which is our business continuity plan, our strategy, is implemented in quick order so that we could have a state of normalcy in St. Kitts and Nevis. Equally so, I want to speak to the tourism sector, which is a critical sector that contributes to our GDP. And part of our process is to ensure that we have a resilient economy. And having a resilient economy means that we have to mitigate against the impact of these hazards against our economy or livelihoods. So in that regards, Mr. Williams, we have been in consultation with the airlines, Port Authority, SCASPA, to ensure that we look at giving priority to the ports, especially the airport, so that we can reopen the airport as soon as possible. Bearing in mind that we would have put out some information that RLB International Airport was closed as of 4 p.m. this afternoon, and we are hoping that based on the impact of the passing storm, we can reopen as soon as possible. I am happy to announce that the AA flight, which is one of the main flights, was able to land today and it was able to leave. And I want to commend the management of SCASPA, in particular the airport, for facilitating that activity and also ensuring that their staff were able to secure all the navigation equipment and they were able to get their staff home in safe time. So we have been looking at the sectorial impact to all the sectors. And again, I want to thank the general public in particular for their support and their consideration to the situation. Yes, indeed, we have been receiving the critique in terms of, well, you all make us prepare for a storm, you all did everything, etc. We bought food, we bought supplies, etc. But the reality is this, Mr. Williams. We prepare for the worst and we hope for the best. That's the reality. In disaster management, that's what we do. If tonight we can go through the night peacefully and quietly without having to be impacted, like our colleagues in Martinique and Dominica are being affected at this moment, then I think we have succeeded. So again, my solidarity and the solidarity of NEMA, or the entire National Disaster Management team, as well as by extension the government, is with our friends and colleagues in Dominica, Martinique, and these other places that are being affected severely at the moment. So I want to also read Mr. Williams some information that I would have received from the cable in particular, and the cable itself would have shared that the high winds from Tropical Storm Fiona has caused some power lines in Sandy Point to come into contact with each other. This has resulted in fluctuating voltages and occasional sparking of the lines, resulting in unstable power. The resulting unstable power is affecting internet and TV service to some parts of Sandy Point. The areas affected are as follows: Fig Tree, Farm Housing, Mount Idle, the Alley, Stadium View. And due to health and safety concerns, the cable is unable to address this situation at the moment. I also want to update the general public and the water services. You know, Mr. Williams, we have been facing drought. This is something that we brought, meaning NEMA would have brought to the attention of the government since last year, because it's a slow onset hazard that we don't pay much attention to. So again, we are actually looking for some strategies to address this, because it's a severe situation. And in this regard, we know that the water department has taken some steps, mitigative steps, to address this situation by rationing the water in order to preserve what we have, and until we can get a long-term strategy in place to address this situation. So persons would be experiencing this exercise or operation, which is ongoing. Some of this operation is not related to the passage of the storm. However, it's important to note that the Director of Water Department, Mr. Williams, has indicated that if the storm is going to impact us severely, and there's torrential downpours, then they will have to close some of the wells in order for them to protect the wells themselves, so they won't become contaminated. So there has been some releases that they have put out for persons to know that in the event that there will be severity of impact, then the water will be turned off. I think I saw a release that says 8 p.m. I'm not certain if that will hold. I am told what will hold is the severity of the impact. And I am happy that some citizens have taken some initiatives to store water. And I want to take the opportunity at this time to thank the telecommunications providers, Flow, Digicel. You would have seen a text message where they would have been asking citizens to basically store 3 days of drinking water for the passage of the storm. That was good. So thank you, Flow and Digicel. Also, we would have seen some scrolls that were initiated by the cable sharing information about NEMA and the storm itself, the warnings, and also contact information for NEMA. So with that said, Mr. Williams, I want to assure the general public and also echo the commitment that was given by the Honorable Prime Minister to ensure that all the necessary resources will be made available, will be deployed to ensure that the safety and security of every single citizen in this country will be of high priority.
Mr. Samuel, you know, it was instructive to hear you say that people are already impacted in Sandy Point,
yes,
with electricity lines and so on. The storm has not reached us yet.
Correct.
But yet people have already been impacted just by some of the effects of the disturbance in the weather. Of course, sometimes people are very suspicious of Met people and suspicious of weather people, yes, and all that sort of a thing, and they play it down.
Yes, yes.
They play it down, and we always hear about the calm before the storm and
yes,
all of that, and some people say, no, storm is coming, and so on, and they have all these conspiracy theories that they have. What would you say to people like that? Because these are the people who do not prepare as they should prepare, yeah, because they are very skeptical. They are skeptics.
Mr. Williams, we have to use the old adage and the old saying, prevention is better than cure. And the Honorable Prime Minister would have indicated in the pre-strike meeting that one life lost is one life too many. We see instances, for example, let me use the guts, or what we know, scientifically know, waterways. The guts in particular. Sometimes we are not aware that significant rainfall is in the mountainside, and suddenly you see the guts start to run, and they run consistently, and they run with force. And when we are asking persons not to traverse these areas, you are actually seeing persons actually traveling against the flow of water and becoming a potential victim of this particular phenomenon. We have to remain prepared. The reality is precaution, and that's one of the key words that we use, precaution. The precautionary measure is better to take this precautionary measure than for us to have to respond to and basically inform the public of deaths, injuries, and other form of impact that can take our country down a path that we want to economically. So, Mr. Williams, the reality is, general public and to everyone, is that the Met Office has to provide us with that information. We have to be guided by the science. The reality is, at times, is that weather is so dynamic, and Irma and Maria showed us that. As a matter of fact, as I was just explaining to you all, that our colleagues in the south were not preparing for the storm because all models showed that the trajectory for the storm would have been impacting areas such as Antigua, St. Kitts, Nevis, those northern Leeward Islands. The storm took a dip. That's nature for you. Took a dip, and it distanced itself from us. So therefore, we are extremely happy that the storm actually distanced itself from us. Pastor Jeremy Thomas prayed. He said in this Pitchstrike meeting in his prayer, don't worry, we're going to pray this storm away. And maybe, we did pray this storm away because however, Mr.
away from us, but
move away from us.
It's moving now towards directly
correct
to some countries.
Some countries. But Mr. Williams, as Mr. Elmo Burke would have said, the northern quadrant of the storm is where you find, let's look at a hammer. You have the handle and you have the iron part. The quadrant is like the iron part of the hammer. So the reality is that we are going to be impacted by the remnant of the storms, like a hammer impacting something, an object. So the reality is we have to be prepared. We don't know the effects of this. Rainfall is a hazard. Wind is a hazard. So therefore, we have to be ready at all times for any eventuality. And that's why we have to take the precaution. If it doesn't happen, amen, if you buy some food, listen, at least you don't have to shop for the next couple of weeks. If you made some arrangements, you are prepared for the next possible threat. So look at it as an investment into your safety and security.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Samuel. A word to the wise, of course, is enough.
It's enough.
And thank you so much.
Yes, so to the general public, please feel confident that we are going to be here overnight. If nothing happens, we are going to glorify in it. If something happens, rest assured we will be deploying all the necessary resources to assist you. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you so much. I don't know if we are ready for Mr. Dyer, but Mr. Dyer is the director of the Nevis Disaster Management Department, and we will invite him to share on what is happening in terms of preparations over there in Nevis for Tropical Storm Fiona. Mr. Dyer.
Hi, good evening, Lesroy, and good evening to your viewing and listening audiences.
Mr. Dyer, you can go ahead.
Okay, here on Nevis, we started the preparation for the arrival of Tropical Storm Fiona since yesterday when we had our Nevis Disaster Committee Management meeting. This meeting was chaired by the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, and the meeting was attended by all stakeholders, NGOs, and volunteers, and members of the private sector. We had a discussion that lasted some 2 hours, where each stakeholder were able to provide their status of readiness, and we appreciated their discourse, and we also move into now the preparatory phase. For instance, for the sectors, we had the fisheries department. They ensured that all fisher folk remove their vessels from the sea to land and secured. We had NEVLEC and the other utilities reporting on their preparatory actions. They also had the generators and battery operated equipment on site for in the event the generator would have failed, then they have the battery backups. We have our satellite communications, radio communications in place. Based on the strength of Fiona, we were not able to, well, we decided not to operate our shelters. So we are certain that the wind speed would not be a major factor here for us. However, the significant rainfall is a threat. Traditionally, the flood-prone areas on Nevis are Stony Grove, Lower Bath. In St. Thomas's, we have the Cades Bay area. In the St. Paul's area, also have Ramsbury. In the northwest, in St. James, we have the Newcastle area. These are our flood-prone areas here on Nevis. We had partnered with the Public Works Department throughout the year to have a robust drain cleaning program and gut cleaning program. So we are mindful of the 4 to 6 inches of rainfall that we may get throughout the evening tomorrow, as the Met services have indicated that the storm would pass some 53 miles south of St. Kitts Nevis, but Nevis is more southerly than St. Kitts, so we expect to be closer to the center of circulation and probably the core of the thunderstorms, and may experience some significant rainfall as well. Looking at our flood management system, we have that in place. We did our maintenance routine prior to the arrival of Fiona, and we are monitoring our flood management system here as we speak. We have worked from the statistics so far. We have had more rainfall on the southern side of the island. We have experienced a ½ inch of rain already for this evening, and we are monitoring that. The drain cleaning program, as I indicated, is robust, so we should not expect too many damages from flooded areas, except we may have blockages that from debris flowing from upstream. The business sector, they were represented in our meeting yesterday, and we have recognized that some of their establishments were shuttered. Some placed sandbags at their facilities, especially in the southern side of the island. So we are grateful for the preparatory actions. We have had here in the EOC with us this evening the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force, Fire and Rescue Services, and we were also had a brief visit from the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, who assured the members here, the member staff of the Disaster Management and volunteers, that all will be well and he should be back shortly. So we are grateful for that visit. It's a moral booster, but we continue to monitor the activities. We have several phone lines available for persons to call in the event that they are impacted, and we continue to monitor and liaise with our partners there at NEMA. Thank you.
We thank you very much, Mr. Dyer, for giving us that update on what is happening on our sister island over there, Nevis. We have come to the end of this briefing. For now, we may be back. Of course, we're here to provide you with updates. But of course, as you heard throughout the entire briefing from those who spoke, that we are to take every measure, and we are to be serious in terms of taking every measure to mitigate against damage to life and to property, which is very important. Now, checks around your homes. You should check around your homes for loose items that may become projectiles, may become missiles, and persons are encouraged to stay indoors until the all clear. That was the message that was given by the National Disaster Coordinator, Mr. Abdias Samuel. Additionally, if people need to reach out, there are a few hotline numbers. Those numbers are 466-3874, 466-3874, 466-9626, 466-9626, and 466-7453. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for listening, and continue to take all the precautions that are necessary. Take care.